Hey. Hello. Woohoo. I don't know if this is this mic on. Hello. Hey guys. Woo. Hello. It's like old home week here. I don't have a gavel and I don't want a gavel today, so if I could get everybody to pay attention, please. First, I thank y'all so much. I tell you, for those out in the audience online, watching us wherever, it's like old home week. We've got a full house and we're really happy about that. I want to thank everybody that showed up to the meeting tonight and anybody who's attending online, watching us on Zoom or YouTube and all of the other ways that we're able to broadcast these kind of meetings. Tonight we're going to talk about the draft of our comp plan, the work that Able City and of course Jennifer's staff has been diligently working on. We're going to take comments from Jason, from Jennifer, and then comments from the public, and then kind of do just a round table type of discussion with Able City as well. If you've got any really long comments, like I had, a list of things, it might be best at some point to email that to Jennifer so that she can forward those comments on. But again, I want to thank you all for showing up tonight. And with that, I would like to applause for Jennifer and her staff for the hard work that they've been doing. An acknowledgement and a thank you to Jason and Able City and his staff for what they've been doing. And with that, I'd like to just turn it over to Jason so he can explain and we can move forward with tonight's presentation. Jason, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Jason King. I get to be the project director of a very talented multidisciplinary team that I'm representing tonight. And this is exciting. This is the official unveiling of the comprehensive plan for Alamorada. I remember 2001 with the first plan. I remember when the village became its own municipality. So it's exciting for me personally to be part of your history. Now what we're going to do tonight, like the mayor said, is I'm going to do maybe a 20-minute presentation just showing you the highlights of the plan. Then we're going to do question and answer. Maybe another 20 minutes. And then we'll have an informal discussion around each of the boards. So what the boards are, these are the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. These are the most important parts. This is the part that gets activated. So it's not the whole plan. It's a 250-page plan with a substantive discussion about history and ecology and environment and economy. But the goals and policies are all listed here. And so for a lot of people, it'll be your first chance to just take a look at them. Printed large. Pam's also put together Post-its and pens for people to just write down ideas and post it right onto the boards. Pam is also one of the authors of the plan, and so she and I will just be able to discuss with you. Now, the plan's available at the Alamorada Village website. Go to the Document Center. There's a link here, there's a QR code, but it's easily found if you go to the village website. And like the mayor said, send comments to Jennifer, the planning director, or you could send them to myself, or our website will also have an online survey where people are able to place their comments that way. So there's multiple ways to have this conversation. Now, remember, what is the comprehensive plan? It's required of all Florida local governments. It's the guiding document to direct capital improvements, evaluate development projects, guide public policy, and ensure that Alamorada continues to be the place that people want it to be. For the most part, this is an update of a plan that was working pretty well. So most of what you see around the room is going to be familiar to you. It's been put in a beautiful format by Pam painstakingly. And this is obviously not the last time we'll talk about this draft. So there's going to be a 30-day public comment period. Again, sending comments to Jennifer or myself or to Pam or online. Then, of course, there's the LPA meetings, there's a state review of the document, and then there's the village council meetings. So this is just, again, this is the first draft. This plan will change quite a bit before it's finally adopted, and that's a good thing. A lot of you, we met during just about a year ago. We did the public charrette here in this room. And I know it feels like a long time. A lot's actually changed in Almirada in a year. And some of the big decisions that we were weighing in on have actually been decided. But I just want to assure you that it typically takes in Florida about 2 years to 2.5 years to create a comprehensive plan. Everything's on schedule. We've been working at this for about 1.5 years. And so we missed you too, but we haven't fallen behind. What we hope to do is to have we'll probably do another session like this with another draft. And then we begin the formal adoption process in late summer, fall, and then the comprehensive plan hopefully is adopted in fall or winter of this year. So yeah, in this room, many of you familiar faces. Some people have left the keys, sadly. I looked at this photograph. But we were working around tables. We started with kind of empty maps, and people were giving us their ideas. And there's a lot of continuity in this plan, of course, but there's also a lot of great ideas that came out of those conversations. You remember that some of you were coming up to the front of the room and you were presenting your ideas to us, and we were taking notes. We had the open design studio. People were dropping in. They were looking over our shoulder as we were drafting language, as we were drawing plans. We had the technical meetings right here. We had over 90 attendees. So we were taking what we heard from the public, and we were essentially, pinning them up with decision makers, elected, appointed, with departments like Department of Transportation. We were meeting with environmentalists and recreation and open space advocates, economic development people, the Chamber of Commerce, Public Works, staff. So we took the ideas we heard from the public, we refined them in these meetings, and then we turned them into the goals and the policies. And I think the most important part continues to be sort of the one-on-one conversations. The conversations that we've had with you, I hope you see your ideas reflected in this plan, because we've learned a lot. During that 1 week, over 200 people participated, which was amazing. We were busy for the whole 5 days. Virtually, online, the online survey, people were filling out the surveys, and over 700 people. And so, this is roughly 1,000. This is a large percentage of the people in Almirada. And you'll remember in March, we did a pinup, a marathon 300-slide, hour-and-a-half pinup of what we had heard, and we asked, is the plan on the right track? And a lot of you said absolutely and yes. But then 30% maybe needed more information. Like, the devil is in the details. What is it you're really saying, Jason? And that's the plan. This is your chance to, if you were part of the undecided group, now you can look at the language and see what we did and see if it makes sense to you. Now, you remember the very first exercise that we did, we asked one word that came to mind about Almirada now and in the future. And yeah, traffic came up the largest, right? So that was like, maybe we had 30 people in the room at that time. Actually, no, there's packed. Yeah, so it was about 60 people. So for traffic to be that large, that's a lot of people. That's maybe 20 people saying that's the first word that came to mind. Traffic, crowded, overdeveloped. But then you also see beautiful home and ocean. One word that comes to mind about the future, and people were positive. People were excited about the future. You see green. That's a lot of people saying green. Balanced, beautiful, conservation. But there's also fears. You see overbuilt. You see underwater, right? And so we took the ideas that we heard from the public. We boiled down a very complex conversation into 5 big ideas. Create a more walkable, bikeable, and multimodal community, balance responsible development with community character, prioritize affordable and workforce housing, enhance green spaces and protect natural resources, and add community amenities and upgrade infrastructure. So what a comprehensive plan is it's the consensus ideas. It's the things that generally everyone can agree on. So there's tensions in the keys, as you might have heard this, between things like environmental protection and economic development. The comprehensive plan doesn't solve every local question. It's really what everybody can agree on. It's what everybody can work toward together. And so I think just about everyone would agree that these 5 big ideas are important. So there's multiple elements. There's 11 different elements. Again, just 15 minutes, let me just tell you about a few of them. The future land use element establishes a long-term framework of how land in Alamorada will be used. It balances growth, environmental protection, and community character. It defines land use categories, development intensity, and guides zoning and development decisions. It's right up front. It's the one with the maps. It's probably the most important element. And right up front, limit growth within the village. Alamorada shall manage the rate of development and population growth to promote small town character. Everyone feels that. Realtors, developers, property owners, newcomers, and people who have been here for a long time. It's easy to say limit the growth within the village and that should be our first priority. Because that's one of the plan's big ideas. But at the same time, it recognizes that we also need to support affordable and workforce housing and preserve working waterfronts. In your first plan in 2001, this was barely, affordable housing was not yet a crisis, it was barely mentioned. And the working waterfronts, the restaurants, but also the places that are pulling stone crab traps or putting boats in, they didn't have protections. So this is growth management, but this is also protecting what's here and allowing people to continue to live in the Keys and preserving the places that we love. Encourage mixed-use workforce housing and address non-conforming properties. A lot of the places where we hear the sunset happy hours and we eat our stone crabs and everything, a lot of these places were built before land development regulations, and if a storm could take them out, and our job with the comprehensive plan is to make sure they continue to remain. Goal 1.6, and this is very different from the last plan. Improve the aesthetics of Alamorada's built environment. So this is a big goal. It talks about developing design guidelines for commercial development and enhancing the appearance of the US 1 corridor, right? Last time we were here, people were talking about there's a bit of a discrepancy between your gorgeous, beautiful neighborhoods and the impression one has when they drive on US 1. And you remember, in order to get more information on this topic, we did the community image surveys, where people were placing red and green dots. And so we tallied the red and green dots. And there's a board in the back which shows these. But in general, green is good, and people want to see more of it. And red is anywhere USA. It's development that could be happening in Florida City or Homestead. Red was what people want to see less of in the Keys. So that's a goal of the plan. Is if growth, the plan says something like build well or not at all. If growth is going to happen, then it should improve the quality of life and the quality of the look of the Keys. And you took us to, and we talked about really cool new places like the Green Turtle Inn. I remember Pierre's grand opening. That was impressive. That felt pretty cool. That's been an awesome spot for full moon parties. The Visitors Center, is Keysy architecture. Dormers, overhangs, brackets, the V-clamp metal. So more of that. The comprehensive plan talks about creating design guidelines so that way development looks a little bit more like that. Everyone gets to stay. No one is pushed out. Your businesses continue as normal. But when someone new comes in and redevelops, it will improve the quality and the look of Alamorada. The transportation and mobility element provides a framework for moving people safely and efficiently while reducing reliance on US 1. It evaluates current conditions, including the heavy dependence on cars, seasonal congestion from tourism, and limited pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. And the plan emphasizes a shift toward multimodal transportation, including walking, biking, low-speed vehicles, and transit options. You remember, this was online. Online, we asked, what are your top 3 priorities for the comprehensive plan update? And on your left is conservation, green and open space, and preservation. Those together, the green, that's the most important. But then came traffic. 21% of people said, do something about the traffic. because this is like, an increasingly unfortunate part of life in paradise. And so the plan, goal 2.1, ensure alignment and coordination with regional mobility strategies is a planner way of saying establish mode share goals, prioritize bicycle, pedestrians, and transit. In a graphic, right now in Almirada, only 8% of trips, well, let me put it this way. Right now in Almirada, 92% of trips involve a car with one person in it. 92% of trips is a car with one person in it. For as long as that's the case, it is hard to make any progress. So the plan sets the goal of, let's go to 15% of trips not using a car. So you see that the gray of single-use car usage goes down slightly. In the most walkable places, and we talked about this, and the people of Almirada travel all over. And one of the best parts of our conversations were you were sitting at the table and you're showing us pictures of other places. And we talked about Paris, and we talked about parts of Boston, Copenhagen, and we talked about places people didn't like Houston. And we talked about how in a lot of these places, there's a very large shift. The majority of the trips are not involving cars. And so how could we bring that concept to Almirada? And one of my favorite ideas came from the mayor. It came from a bunch of different sources. And it's along the old highway, the old road. And it's the idea of formalizing a path for bicycles, pedestrians, maybe for golf carts. That pathway alone, mile marker 81, mile marker 88, were both depicted in the plan. You see pictures of that. That's a cool project that just about everybody could agree on. And there's technical difficulties, and there's concerns about purchasing a right-of-way. But we had a chance to look at maps and to review this concept with the village, and basically develop a quiet, safe, multimodal back road. It currently exists in a format already, but there's room for improvement. So that's a plan that 100% came out of conversations. The other thing that we learned a lot about, and has changed since I lived in the Keys, is how the Arts District has been activated, and it's become a kind of downtown, right? And so the plan talks a lot about infilling that area, investing in that area, basically helping that area to become everything it can be without it losing its soul. And there's renderings and there's pictures. You'll remember those. On the topic of traffic, you'll remember our economic consultant said, if you grow jobs but not housing, then you're going to get commuter traffic. And he talked about how every year, roughly 20 more commuters are added to Almirada's roads. So every year, there's like 20 more cars in front of you as you drive to Hog Heaven. And this is so he took on this problem. His recommendation to us was to prioritize affordable and workforce housing. And so the housing element addresses the availability, affordability, and diversity of housing options. It highlights challenges, and it evaluates housing needs across income levels and identifies gaps. So it's difficult to summarize this in sort of one set of images, but I liked this one. I liked the idea that, there's valued local businesses that are important to the tax base and to the economy and to the experience. But one day, when it comes time for them to upgrade, what we're seeing in this image is the combination of a lot of things. We're seeing a walkable area. We're seeing an area accessible by a back road. We're seeing a kind of Keysy architecture, and we're also seeing housing being developed in these second floors. Because people living there and working below is one less car that's on the road. So that idea. Specifically, the plan says, facilitate the redevelopment of single-story commercial structures along US 1 into multi-story mixed-use structures with attractive facades in accordance with design guidelines. This is a big policy shift, but it would be a very cool thing. The plan talks about updating the zoning and development standards to facilitating housing development, and there's something like 15 different approaches, strategies. It's stuff the village is already doing. It's ideas from elsewhere about developing public-private partnerships and coordinating with housing providers and providing inexpensive places for people to live. The plan also controversially introduces the idea, let me just move something here. Well, I'm going to, let's see. Well, this is less controversial. This is the allow government entities such as the fire department, police, and schools to build affordable housing for their workers on site. This is something that island communities have been doing. We're working in Martha's Vineyard in Edgartown, so they're building a new police station and a new fire station, and there's housing for workers there. We're working in Nantucket. They're building a new school complex, and there's housing for teachers as part of that complex. The more controversial idea is the one, well, I can't find it, but it's the one where it says a real estate transfer fee. This is used in Cape Cod. This is used on the west coast of Florida. It's used in Hawaii. It's used in the Barrier Islands, throughout the Virginia coast. A real estate transfer fee. It says something like, I don't have it in front of me, but whenever a house of $2 million or more is sold, a percentage of that sale goes into a affordable housing trust fund, and that trust fund becomes a guaranteed source of funding to purchase land and to build housing. It's a tax. There's no way around it, and nobody likes that. But it is a tax that luxurious island communities like this one are adopting left and right in order to find a source for affordable housing. The comprehensive plan does not tie the village's hands and make them do that. Specifically, the language is consider this. And there's a discussion about other communities, pros and cons of a policy change like that. So already, heads are nodding no, and then other people are smiling yes. Remember, the comprehensive plan doesn't make every decision for you. But the comprehensive plan does bring ideas from other places. And then the comprehensive plan enters into complex discussions. Coconut Lane, properties that the village has been purchasing for affordable housing. We took the design guideline discussion and we started to imagine what these places could look like to make sure they look more Keysy. On topics like the old Silver and Spice lot, it gives different options. There's parking, right? Right now it's parking for the Arts District. Or there's affordable housing, one that has a high level of open space. Or there's the idea of the Islamorada Station. One of the things the comp plan does is it takes ideas that people have been talking about for a long time and it turns it into a rendering and it says, consider this. This is the idea that the old train caboose, which is I think a mile marker 88 roughly, turns into the centerpiece of a park. There's structural issues with that caboose, but maybe it will require a reconstruction. The idea is celebrating the train system that brought life to the Keys and turning that area into a park with parking, with a pavilion, with places for food trucks. So that's an idea. That's an idea that came out of the discussions, and one of our renderers, one of our park planners, drew it as it might be imagined. A few more sections here. The coastal management section is the one that focuses on protecting Islamorada's coastal resources while managing development in vulnerable shoreline areas. It addresses issues such as erosion, storm surge, flooding, habitat preservation. It recognizes the village's exposure to hurricanes and rising sea levels. And this is all stuff you recognize. Protect coastal resources, wetlands, estuaries, living marine resources, and wildlife habitats. But then there's something new from the update on the 2001 discussion. Increase public boat ramps and beaches is one objective. But another one is, but at the same time, regulate access to public beaches and shorelines. And that's a lengthy one. I'm not going to read it. But the idea is just increase access to the bay and to the ocean. And the plan has specific ideas about where that could happen in a controlled way, in a way that creates good neighbors. The conservation element protects natural resources. The sustainability and resilience element is new to the plan. This is one that talks about long-term environmental, economic, and social resilience. So, in our conversations last year, people talked about how, they're 70 or they're 80, but they think about the keys. They wonder about the keys in 50 years, in 100 years. Climate change, sea level rise is a concern on their minds. And they imagine a place that they will never see, and yet they worry about it. It was quite poignant. And so we got very serious about that. So in this element, we talk about resilience, how it's mitigation, it's reducing carbon pollution, and it's also adaptation. It's adjusting to a changing world. Pam worked with our engineering team, and she took Upper Matacumbe, and she just imagined a shoreline that was fortified. There's beach restoration, there's reinforced dunes, there's lifted roads, there's seawalls, there's a levee. Not all of the keys, so we're talking about sea level rise of 2 feet by 2050. It's already having an effect. But Pam goes further in the plan. This is the one place where, the comprehensive plan is the one place that you're supposed to look way ahead into the future. And she imagines the preservation of the keys by use of engineering, both green infrastructure and traditional infrastructure. And this is just an interesting section of the plan. It's largely told in pictures. There's a picture of the before and after. You see Murata Bay and Pierre's. You see US 1, and you see changes which look very subtle from where you're sitting. But this is the addition of shelters and pump stations and levees and underground facilities, mangrove restoration. Let me show you this part. As part of the conversation we had during the charrette, every one of these infrastructure ideas, we bounced them off of a group, and they were voting on it. So the idea of underwater breakwaters, you don't see them, but they stop wave activity. They're under the water. And they have to be marked because the Keys is a place we do a lot of boating. Or the idea of what's called elsewhere levee in dune. The idea of sand, but then underneath that sand is essentially a wall. And that wall stops wave action. So there's so many big engineering solutions in the toolkit. We sort of tested these ideas, and the ones that people were largely supportive of, we put into the plan. Now again, it doesn't make it law, and it doesn't immediately mean that there's funding for these ideas. It just says when our state and our country gets serious about climate adaptation, Alamorada has a plan, and it should be first in line for receiving funding. That's what this does. This isn't something you pay for, but it's something that maybe needs to be done. And if Alamorada has a serious plan, then Alamorada is the first in line. That's important. Everywhere we work, we're working on long-term resilience. But then there's also preserve the unique history and culture of Alamorada. Identify and document the village's history and cultural resources. If you remember that presentation that we gave about a year ago, it was deep into history. It's still an attraction that isn't developed. It's still an experience that the really fascinating history of Alamorada isn't yet told. And so the plan talks very seriously about how that could happen. Just two more sections. Add community amenities and upgrade infrastructure. And this is all things that you'll recognize. Provide needed public facilities, address drainage, stormwater issues. The community facilities is the part about water and wastewater and solid waste in schools and emergency services. We talk about the gaps, and we talk about how the village can make a step in the direction of a higher level of service on these important utilities. The recreation open space, protect green spaces and protect natural resources. So this is recreational facilities, open spaces, quality of life, and environmental health. This is the one where we take on the tricky and divisive issue of the fills. Again, the comprehensive plan just lays out multiple different ideas. Scenario 1, there's the do nothing. Scenario 1, light touch restoration. Scenario 2, passive recreation and replanting. Scenario 3, active recreational islands. Last time we were here, we were doing some polling, and we don't need to go into all of that, but that's a fascinating conversation. The fills. This plan has opinions on that, and we want to hear what you think. The capital improvements section describes how projects will be funded and implemented over time. The property rights function or element is required of all Florida comprehensive plans, but it's good. It makes sure that property rights are respected in planning and regulatory decisions. It reflects Florida's statutory requirements, but it also gives some reassurance to property owners that the plan will not go too far. The intergovernmental coordination talks about improving the lines of communication with the state, with the federal government, and with local municipalities. All right, so that was about a half an hour. That was just a little sliver of the stuff. I mean, I could do this for 4 hours. This is so cool to me. But you're saying no. I mean, really, let's do 2 hours and then a half-hour break, and then we'll come back. All right. Or let's do this. Let's open this up to question and answer. We'll do 30 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll do 30 minutes of conversations around the room at the boards. So why don't we get the microphone and now this is in some ways an official unveiling of the plan, but also the plan has been online for a month, and a lot of you have had a chance to review it. And so do you have any questions that you'd like to pose to the plan authors, to staff, and to leadership? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Joe Wishmeyer in Plantation Key. When y'all were doing your original presentation, you talked about how much the public was going to get involved, and you were going to have all these workshops, and we were all going to have a say in how it got put in. And you've been at this for over a year, and our staff has had it since September, yet this is the first time we're really having a meeting. I remember the first comp plan had 18 workshops, so there was a lot of public input. You also said you were going to be doing the LDRs at the same time as the comp plan. I think they go hand in hand. So I guess my question is, are we going to have lots of workshops now before it actually comes to fruition? And how can you have a comp plan without completed LDRs, updated LDRs?
Really good questions, yeah. It feels like a long time since we've all been in this room and we've had a conversation. As a practical matter, it takes a long time to write a 250-page document. It involved a lot of conversations with people, with different agencies. There was a lot of follow-up on what we, and I hate to say this, but this is just how long it takes. We often disappear for a year after the charrette, and it's a downer. It's anticlimactic. But Pam and the team have been working full-time. This is something like the 4th or 5th revision. We've been going back with staff. We've been pinning it up with people. So your question was, is this where we start with the public workshops? Yeah. This won't be the last one of these. We want you to look at this draft and evaluate it. We'll come back with another, and we'll do it again until we've got something everyone can agree on. Then there's also the LPA, there's also the Village Council, there's also the state. So yeah, this is sort of the normal process. Your other question was about the land development regulations. So the land development regulations become typically the land development regulations that accompany the comprehensive plan come in the form of an appendix item. And that is something that's still being drafted. The reason for it is we need to get feedback on the comp plan before we know, which is the big goals and the policies, before we can write the specific land development regulations. So yes, in the next sets of meetings, we'll talk about the land development regulations. So we appreciate your patience. The thing that you've been thinking about, that is starting tonight.
Hi, thank you. Jerry O'Cathy. Could you reaffirm your statement earlier? Did you say 2 feet of sea rise by 2050?
Yeah, the Climate Compact, which is a regional compact signed by Monroe County, cites 2 feet of sea level rise by 2050.
ring accurate, but I don't know any better.
Well, I'm curious. What's your feeling?
It would be conjecture, but that would be conjecture. I wouldn't want to understand.
Yeah, well, that's right. So, no, there is no crystal ball when it comes to this. We have to cite someone.
Well, there's a science.
There is, yeah. There's Monroe County, Miami-Dade County, Palm Beach County, and then Broward County. They signed this thing called the Climate Compact, which involved scientists and an agreed-upon number. And our plan cites that number. But yeah, if your point is that's not the only number out there, absolutely, you're right.
Barry Ray. Good to see you again, by the way, and great work. I have a lot of interest in the old highway, and I think a lot of people do. I find it hazardous. I mean, absolutely dangerous. Almost got killed on a bicycle 4 times in one day. All right, and that's in the bike lane.
Wow.
So for me, and I think a lot of people that actually have access to the old highway, it should be more of a park-like environment. And I know the mayor and I both have talked about how do we change that so it's not a through road. And part of what I learned is that Google and all the mapping services now divert through traffic onto our old highway.
Yeah.
So I think it's more than us just coming up with plans that say, hey, look, we want a pathway over here protected. I really want them on both sides, tell you the truth, because
Yeah.
I do actively bike and I ride like a vehicle. So I think that's important that we look at both sides and those rights of way. And I appreciate the fact you guys are already digging into it. So that is great work. But when it comes to these types of things that we don't control, how do we basically create, protection for our community? And that's a really difficult thing to do. We all want to use it when traffic's ridiculous, but we don't necessarily want all the people that are passing through town to use it as access.
Yeah.
And that's just wrong. So I don't know, it's more of a question, what are ideas that we can get that to stop? And how do we make the road more compatible? The stop signs are a pain in the butt, and I think maybe loping speed bumps may be a better idea, but I'd love to hear your ideas on it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, so that's right. It takes more than a path. So in the comprehensive plan, Pam was looking it up, but Tony Garcia of Street Plans Collaborative, he wrote a part which is called Limited Access Roads, and it's about turning the old highway into more of a limited access facility, essentially a locals road. The Department of Transportation has enough capacity on US 1. When it does its when it does its level of service analysis, it doesn't take into consideration that road. That's an important point that Tony found out, because that means that it could become a kind of limited access facility. Take a look at the comprehensive plan. Tony talks about the different ways of slowing cars, making it easier for pedestrians and cyclists, and turning that into a local road. He talks about the legal, the sort of how far you're able to go legally, into turning that into a limited access facility. So,
Is that in writing?
yes, that is, yeah. But for the sake, Pam's looking it up. If you can, download the PDF, search it, see if it goes far enough. I think we're going to have Tony Garcia back down to the Keys to talk about transportation and that road more specifically. Right now, it talks about 5 different strategies, but what we would like to do is to narrow it down to a plan for the old highway. So, the plan is more than just the path, but the specific approach has yet to be decided. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I am Linda Giordano, and this is my voice after meningitis. I happen to live on Airstream Lane here in Tavernier, which is you turn down the front of those 2 properties, down the center of them, a little to the right, and right down the street.
Yeah.
And my concern is, what happened to our single-family homes that we love? That little neighborhood right there is so precious. It's full of families. And when I went by the Key Largo one that was built and failed, just this weekend with my husband, there was not a car in sight, not a baby carriage. I'm seeing a baby carriage in one of these drawings that came to my home the other day, and I thought, oh, that guy's going to be killed, him and his baby. Because just even taking a right into Village to turn on to Vacation and then Airstream.
Yeah.
Let's go back to our single-family homes, which is, I believe, what that space is zoned for, because I remember standing in this room not too long ago fighting a commercial rezone, and my concern is I happen to own my home since 2005. It was built. We built it. We are new concept homes. We built several single-family homes on that block. There are beautiful families living in them. Across the street from me, there's a mobile home that has 2 sisters and their family in there. Kids going to our schools, playing in their yard because they have one. But when I'm seeing in these drawings, I hear common space, I think I read, and I thought, oh, wow, so you get to barbecue with 50 people on a Sunday. But the single-family home brings a sense of community to us. It sends our kids to schools, and they play sports in our community, and we all show up at the football game and we cheer them on. And when I see efficiencies in 1-bedroom apartments, I wonder, wow, how will you fit a family in there in our single-family neighborhoods that we want to nurture all the wild animals that come up the canal, which you will be hearing from Morgan Bailey. She is my daughter. She sits on our porch daily when she's home from college and admires all the wildlife, the birds, the cardinals, the bluebirds, the pigeons that often nest in our yard. The hammock at the end of our street will be destroyed and concrete will take its place. And really, if I start to bawl, I'm very sorry. But it's what we live for. I get up in the morning, I go with my coffee to my canal. I'm more towards the end, but not all the way. In fact, I see a couple of my sweet neighbors here that also enjoy our canal because they just walk over from their single-family home where they raise their kids. My kids can't wait to come home and find their friends from high school, from Coral Shores, that went off to college and returned, and they live in their parents' single-family home for now. But what they really want is to build businesses here and buy their own single-family home so that they can raise their families here because it is the most precious lifestyle on earth. I've lived in California and Tennessee. I'm a native of Miami. I was born in North Miami. After getting married, where did I come back? To the Florida Keys. What was supposed to be our vacation home, once my girls got old enough to go to high school and figured out, boys don't pick you up in cars, they pick you up in boats. And we go to the sandbar and we have fun and teachers are there and it's community. And I look at this workforce housing and yes, we desire some workforce housing, affordable, because what was built in Key Largo is not. Really, that single-family home should become affordable to people who want to live full-time and bring their families to the Keys because families generate cash. When I bring my family to eat at the Shrimp Shack, my favorite restaurant, by the way, because Morgan works there. Morgan works at Shrimp Shack. She comes home from college, sits on the porch, goes to work at the Shrimp Shack with her high school friends that are also returned from college that want to build a life here. How do we do that in these monstrosity buildings that we can't have a baby carriage in the front of because we will be killed, us and the baby, from the traffic? And forget about the birds in that hammock. I don't know if you were one of the clipboards that happened to walk that property that were walking up and down the street for a while. You would have seen many nests. One of them was on the front of my car, for instance. My husband put up an umbrella so her egg didn't fry. Pigeons and bluebirds and a little cardinal. My mom was a redhead, so I like to think it's her returning because she once lived across the street right next to my sweet neighbors right there. And my mom loved the Keys. She was born in Staten Island, moved to Miami, and then landed here and thought, what a beautiful life. Our traffic is tough sometimes, yes. And we do need to think about what happens to traffic right in front of those, the ones in Key Largo. I wouldn't want to sit on my porch there. I don't think they have a porch because they're on the freeway.
Yeah.
And I thank you very much, but I do want to promote that we live in a single family home neighborhood, not a monstrosity of building. What a shame, it's shameful. Our founders of Tavernier would not be happy. That's not what they planned for us. You could build that in Key Largo because it looks good there. It looks like it belongs. Not here, not in Tavernier.
Thank you.
Well, that was beautiful. I mean, that was poetry. There's a couple things I can respond to. The idea of the Keys as a place of single-family house neighborhoods. I lived in Tavernier, mile marker 92 on Sunrise Drive, as a single-family house, and yeah, absolutely. Just to put you at ease a little, what this plan doesn't do is it doesn't densify single-family neighborhoods. In urban planning in the country, the densification of single-family neighborhoods, you take a single-family neighborhood, you allow duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes. That is a common approach in order to try to solve the affordable housing problem. That doesn't happen in this code. Our future land use map, our zoning map remain the same, and the single-family neighborhoods go untouched. I think the other area, though, you're concerned about is the hammock along US 1 that was undeveloped, that had the sparsely settled category, and now it's becoming dense affordable housing. And the reality, one of the things our firm does is it builds affordable housing. I've seen the pro forma. I would love to continue to build single-family houses like I grew up in as affordable houses. But unfortunately, the cost of materials and the cost of labor make it impossible. We're densifying along US 1 in order to provide housing opportunities. It's tough if you're in one of the transition spots where single-family house is on US 1 because that is an area where the apartment buildings are appearing. 3 stories, 2-story structures, 3-story structures. Those transition areas, yeah, suddenly instead of having hammock in their backyard, they have apartment buildings. It's true. It's a difficult thing. All I want to say is that this plan isn't doing anything to densify the single-family neighborhoods. The plan very much advocates for keeping 90% of Almirada just like it is, maybe 95%. No, there's in Almirada, there's 4 opportunity sites, that's what they're called in the plan, where affordable housing could be located on US 1. But there's none, we're not changing the zoning in any of the single-family neighborhoods. The plan makes a very strong statement in favor of continuing to be a front porch community with families and slow streets. And again, that's not my work everywhere, but it is my work here. So my company, we don't build affordable housing or workforce housing in the Keys. We don't work for the public and the private sector in the same place at the same time. My experience is elsewhere, places where I would like to build single-family neighborhoods. Well, so we work in South Miami right at the moment.
Let's move on to the next
Yeah.
question.
But anyway, I just want to say that
Thank you.
I think your view is shared by many people. I think it's a very important point. The plan does its best to continue to promote Almirada as a single-family neighborhood community.
Hello, quick question. I came to the other meetings. Thank you for coming back. I was looking at objective 8.11 about, it says to maintain a standard of 3.79 acres per 1,000 persons who are residents of the Keys, and it says to maintain a minimum level. I was wondering if you know what the maximum level is, and is there potential to try to designate more recreational space, particularly for our full-time children and families and things like that?
Yeah, that's right. Goal 8.1, provide adequate recreation and open space. That's right. And it talks about the minimum level of service standard of roughly 3.8 acres per 1,000 persons. So what the comprehensive plan is doing in that case is it's referencing Alamorada's Parks and Recreation Plan. What we're doing is we're using a metric that is in that plan. But you're right. The minimum does seem like underachieving, right? What would be the optimal level of service for Parks and Recreation? What other places do? What should Alamorada aspire to? I like that. Pam's writing it down. That deserves some research. Yeah.
Got one more question for you. In full disclosure, I'm a retired 20-year emergency planner from Monroe County Emergency Management, senior planner, and the question pertains to policy 2-1.1.12. Provide a stage-phased evacuation procedure to maintain a 24.5-hour hurricane evacuation clearance time. Paragraph 2, approximately 48 hours in advance of tropical storm force winds, should be force winds, a mandatory evacuation of non-residents, visitors, recreational vehicles, RVs, etc., and military personnel from the village shall be initiated. I'm not sure, I think that might be misspoken, but I wanted to confirm that with you. Is there any particular reason those words were included there?
Good question. So Pam's looking it up. Are there words, is it the military personnel that is the concern? Or, yeah, that is kind of conspicuous, isn't it?
I have a follow-up question for you.
A mandatory evacuation of non-residents visitors, RVs, liveaboards, and military personnel. So, sometimes weird stuff just appears when you write a 250-page document. I can't explain that one, but we have noted it. I don't know. I understand why you'd make the tourists leave when the storm comes.
Well, we don't have a large enough military contingency here for you to be concerned about.
Yeah.
They're all affiliated with Operation in the Key West.
All right. Let's mark that one. Let me get back to you on that.
Of course.
Yeah. And you had another question?
My supplementary question is,
Yep.
when you take into account and discuss evacuation, are you considering all 5 military installations in the city of Key West, primarily our naval institution?
I don't know,
Well, if you're not, would you please give that consideration?
So tell me more.
Consideration to factor into your evacuation
I see.
conversation.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, let's do that. So Pam, let's, number one, we're not changing any policies when it comes to hurricane evacuation, but I do think we could provide more information, and I do think there's room for clarity, especially on those 2 topics. So yeah, let's revisit those.
Thank you. Capman.
I'm going to give a couple of high points. I'm going to send everybody this presentation. It's full of court sworn testimony by the state's experts. For the record, I'm Captain Ed Davidson, 501c3. I was in Tallahassee when critical concern was declared, and I was chairman of the zoning board and the comprehensive drafting committee when it was implemented. Beginning then and ever since, the Florida Keys hurricane evacuation model has contained serious flaws that underrepresent actual evacuation times, and we have sworn testimony to that effect in court. And the states had these briefings already, and they have ignored them to our disadvantage. Because the citizenry only gets a couple minutes of time, and the developers have years of influence, I'm just going to refer to a couple of issues, and I'll provide more detail on all of it. The Florida Keys hurricane evacuation model is the only single county fantasy evacuation model in the state of Florida. The other 66 counties have multiple county, adjacent county, simultaneous evacuation models, which is the reality. But not for us. Our plan is based on the fundamentally flawed presumption that while we are all fleeing for our lives from a Cat 3, 4, 5, rapidly intensifying, that when we get to Homestead, no kidding, the roads are empty, the turnpike is empty, nobody from Homestead to West Palm Beach has left the house. That the plan is fundamentally presumes that, which is, of course, preposterous. Here's the court testimony. Lawyer asked, is any of the traffic from Dade County included in the calculation of Monroe County clearance time? The answer, no. Not a single person from Dade County. That's not the way it's going to be. The other deep flaw, and this is in the government reports and lots of graphs to back this up. The December 23 rerun of the model by Commerce seeking to allow for more development permits presumes 32% of the site-built homes are empty, when we all know most of those are going to be full of vacation rentals, many of whom are not licensed and not paying full taxes like the rest of us are. The 48 hours isn't going to, but here's the bottom line. Only 26,645 units are evacuated, and 21,288 are not counted as not evacuating. Someday, that could be a fatal fantasy for the rest of us, for some of the rest of us. My own dive shop business, in June, July, and August, virtually all of my customers rent vacation rental homes for a week at a time for $6 or $8 grand. Okay? And the model presumes that most of those homes are empty when they're not. And the most recent study showed that at any given time now all year, not just in the season, that we have as many or more tourists in the Keys as we do residents. And they're going to make us getting out of here alive problematic. Here are the quotes on the actual times. This same expert who ran all the state's models for 21 years, the Regional Planning Council, when we asked him what the realistic evacuation time was, this is in court under oath, and he said, in the 2014 update, there's a lot more people here now, the quote, we were looking at regional clearance times in the neighborhood of the high 30s. That's 37, 38 hours, not this fictional 24.5. I hired the guy who got his job when he retired. And here are quotes from his report, and I'm done. The report scenarios do not include a base scenario consistent with the statewide regional evacuation study, which would include the entirety of Monroe County and Miami-Dade simultaneously evacuating. It is standard, this is part of the quote, it is standard practice to include the surrounding counties for clearance time modeling. While the report attempts to isolate the permanent residence portion of evacuation clearance time, this portion cannot be used as a standalone clearance. Therefore, the report indicates an operational 39.5 to 48-hour actual hurricane evacuation clearance time for all of us in the Florida Keys. This is staggering stuff, and it undermines everything else you're trying to do.
Yeah, so noted, and these are good points, and Pam's taking notes. I think the comprehensive plan should have an expanded discussion of hurricane evacuation times. I think it's the place where your information should go. When I drove here today, you know, the mainland is a construction site. It's one enormous cleared field after another where there's going to be townhouses of like 15 to 30 units to the acre. So let's do this. Let's make sure that the comprehensive plan at least has a discussion that includes the points that you're describing. So right now, I know it's got a small discussion on the hurricane evacuation times. We're deferring to others, but I think you're making good points that should be somewhere, and this is the place for it.
I will get all the documents to you.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Well,
Jason. Ma'am?
My name is Kim Parmalee. I live on Lower Matacumbe. And I'm here to ask that the comprehensive plan update preserve the specific environmental protections that were part of the planning framework for the Lower Matacumbe Native residential area. I want to be clear at the outset, I'm not here to oppose lawful development or permitting of already approved residential lots. My concern is that the updated comprehensive plan should not accidentally remove or weaken the specific eagle protection language that currently applies to this area. The current comprehensive plan contains specific language stating, quote, "The bald eagle's nest in the southwest corner of the Lower Matacumbe Key Residential Low Area 1 shall be protected by a buffer zone in compliance with the requirements set out in the National Bald Eagle Management Guidelines, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, May 2007. That language is important because it provides an objective standard. It protects the property owners, the village, and the wildlife by making clear what rules apply before disputes arise. So it appears that the new comprehensive plan doesn't address that. So actually, Mayor Horton, I had a question for you because you were involved in navigating the platting and approval process for the approximately 40-acre native residential tract on Lower Matacumbe for our family. I would like to ask about the historical planning basis for approval. And let's see here. Was the approval understood to be limited to 10 residential units because of the density limits applicable to the native residential zoning and the comprehensive plan language stating that total residential density shall be limited to 10 units, 1 existing and 9 additional? Does that sound right?
Yeah, as I recall, that was the zoning change that allowed to happen there was so that there could be 1 dwelling unit for every 4 acres. Yeah.
Okay. I'm asking because it is important that the comprehensive plan update not intentionally change the basis on which the original plat was approved by the village. The second question is, and this is also for you, was the area shown as the Parmalee Key Community Area or Eagle Area intended to function as common area or open space as part of the overall plan design? My understanding is that the layout helped accommodate the density requirements for the approved residential lots while also avoiding unnecessary conflict with the eagle habitat. Does that sound right?
I don't recall how that was, but we really need to get on to the comp plan. But and I'll
Well,
have
this is
discussion
regarding
with
the
you,
comp.
but as I recall, there was a eagle protection area that was circled around that active nest at the time. So yeah, I think that was always the intent.
Okay.
To protect that area around the eagles.
Okay, and then the common areas were set aside because it was 40 acres, which only allowed 10 lots. Is that right?
I don't remember why those common areas were done. I know
Okay.
that the density was 4 acres for every dwelling unit on there. One, I think your parents' house.
Yeah.
And then the other 9 that were part of that development. Yeah.
Okay, because the current comprehensive plan includes a specific eel protection standard for Lower Matacumbe, and this is directed to you, should that exact protection be carried forward into the 2026 comprehensive plan? Given that the eagles continue to use this area, including newer nesting activities where they've raised an eaglet this season, I believe the safest approach is to keep the existing objective reference to the National Eagle Management Guidelines. That would help avoid future conflicts between property rights, development review, and habitat protection.
Yeah, noted. All right, so you make a couple good points, Kim. Let me just talk generally, quick, and then we'll talk about the specific eagle buffer zone, we had an evaluation done by the attorney planners at Able City, and we said, look at the old comp plan and look at what we're proposing. What's the difference? It wasn't us, it wasn't the authors, it was our attorney planners. And one of the findings is that this new plan has more explicit environmental protection language. It strengthens policies on mangroves, wetlands, coastal habitats. It emphasizes directing development away from sensitive lands. It integrates conservation with land use decisions. So in general, our objective review found that the plan is greener and it's more conservation oriented. Now, there's a policy. One of the reasons our planners found that is because there's a policy, a new policy, 5.1, 0.4, 0.7, restrict development that could harm endangered, threatened, or special status species and encourage conservation easements, public acquisitions, or deed restrictions. All right, so in general, the plan is more protective. However, the Eagle map is no longer in this plan, right? Now, the Eagle map is a site-specific thing that is typically handled in land development regulations or administrative interpretations or somewhere else. But maybe we're making a mistake, Kim. That's what I'm getting at. And it's possible that what we should do is include in the comprehensive plan those special areas that had that, and it defies the rules of comprehensive planning. But Almirada is different, and so we're evaluating whether that language should go back in.
As far as I know, we only have one nesting pair of eagles in Almirada.
Yeah.
And I think that was put in there specifically when they platted that property to make sure they were protected.
Yeah.
So
So that wouldn't be hard to add. All right, so let's have this, let's give us a little time to consider that. I want to assure you that in general, the comprehensive plan is more protective, but we need to revisit the eagle nesting question.
I've got
Thank you.
another hand up here, Captain.
Hi, Richard Black, Islamorada. Just a question, how much evaluation has gone into the comprehensive plan as far as looking at the 6,000 plus homes that were just awarded about 45 minutes away to our north, and what percentage of our workforce is actually willing to give up living on the mainland to live in the Keys and pay the higher price?
That's a very good question. You're right. There is so much housing happening up there. Right now, or for the last 20 years, the policy has pretty much been ship the employees in, you know. And there's been improvements in public transportation in order to bring people in. So there's a tension between, you know, to what degree can the mainland satisfy this concern? And it is great that there are a lot of new units permitted, although there is hurricane evacuation concerns. Let me just say this. There were a lot of property, or rather businesses, specific businesses in Almirada and in the Keys. And these specific business owners said, I don't want my employees coming in on a bus. It's a higher quality life. It's also more accountability if we could have them living close or on site. So like the Chamber of Commerce is a big advocate for on-site affordable or workforce housing. So when the plan talks about on-site, on-island workforce and affordable housing, it's something that's being asked for. There's also a lot of people who are living in Homestead and Florida City who are not enjoying the benefits of being integrated into a great community where it's nice to raise kids. So the plan does try to build on-site. Now the thing is, if you look at our study and the number of units that could actually fit in Almirada, it isn't a lot. The reality is people will continue to be bussed in from the mainland, and that will be the main place where people live. Sometimes the numbers of affordable housing and workforce housing appear, to me, only symbolic. It's not going to solve the problem. It's not going to bring a lot of residents down here. But it is, in this case of certain specific restaurants and boat dealerships and architects' offices, it is going to, the plan does intend to give them an option to build units that they can fit as long as they're affordable. So,
Do you want to follow up?
I agree with that, and a lot of the comprehensive plan shows these new developments, whether they're 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom places, but it doesn't give the individuals or families opportunity for ownership. It's rent
Yes.
only. And
That's right.
there's a huge difference on keeping people here and having families in our schools and really supporting our neighborhoods if they own the property versus renting it. Renting it basically creates short term. Ownership creates long term.
Yeah.
And that's the issue.
That's a good
Thank
point.
you, Captain. Thank
That-
you.
Now, so just a couple more questions. We promised one-on-one conversations around the maps about specific properties. Let's do that. Let's just do, let's say, 3 more questions, and then we'll move into that conversation. There's a lot of people that are not comfortable taking up the microphone, and we do want to have conversations with them. But go ahead.
Okay, this is number 1 of 3. Again, one of the hats I wore as a senior planner
Yep.
was representative of the county to the South Florida Regional Planning Council.
Nice.
Is that one of your resources?
Absolutely, yeah. We work with,
We represented
yep.
Miami-Dade, Collier County, Broward. So you do draw information from them. They would be great reference for all of the building that's going on at the entrance to the Keys, as well as the 21,000.
That's a good point. You're right.
Well, yes, you should know that.
Yeah, you're right. We work with South Florida Regional Planning Council, and the plan does talk about them.
Let me get done. You know-
However, what's being asked for is a specific picture of what's going on north, and the comprehensive plan doesn't have that yet. But you're right, that information does exist. So let's do that. Let's make sure we've got a discussion of what's going on up north. It mentions it, but this is the place for a more detailed discussion. Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on the point that's been made a couple different times about the desirability of single-family home ownership. I'm president of the board of the local Habitat for Humanity affiliate.
Yeah.
And I don't think your comprehensive plan as currently drafted properly represents those opportunities. We have specifically in the last 8 years built 29 within the village of Islamorada.
Yeah.
And I think the total's like 45 or 47 if I include Key Largo. And there's lots of other opportunities for that are not reflected there. And I happen to believe are much more suitable for your infill use in neighborhoods that are already principally single family.
That's interesting. Well,
And by the way, when we talk about affordable, we specifically back into what is affordable so that a family making a household with an income between 50 and 80% of the area median income
That's right.
only uses 30% of that income to pay their cost of housing, mortgage, taxes, and insurance.
Yeah.
So it's a heck of a deal, and it is the way you get families to the opportunity to live here.
Absolutely. Well, we're big fans of Habitat and all that you've done. If your accomplishments are not properly reflected in the comprehensive plan,
It's not accomplishments, it's opportunities.
all right, absolutely.
I only have 10 pages of written comments for you with
All right.
references that I'll be submitting.
Awesome. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Can you show me any community that's already crowded where if you add housing, you decrease traffic?
Yeah. No, there's no place in the comprehensive plan that says there will ever be a reduction in the number
So we're
of.
going to increase traffic by doing this.
Unfortunately, without exception, development increases the numbers of cars, yeah. The best thing that you can do is, if new development is inevitable, and to some degree it is, you make it so that way those people are able to use their bike, the car, and transit more in order to mitigate some of the misery created by additional rooftops. I hope I didn't say that we can solve the traffic problem. We can't build our way out of the traffic problem.
That's true. Joe had another question.
I'll make this quick. When I spoke before the county commission about hurricane evacuation, they said that only went to the Miami-Dade County line. We all know that's mile marker 112. That's only a third of the way up the stretch.
Yep.
I says, what about the rest of it? They said, oh, we'll give you another 30 minutes. I'm like, man, it takes me that on a normal day.
Yeah.
So I hope you're considering that, and with your hurricane evacuation, goes all the way to the mainland.
Yeah.
And the last one is, there are so many studies, plans, and documents that are referenced throughout your comp plan. Are all these current? Because a lot of times we say, oh yeah, this is from the 2011 or this is from the 2015. have all the studies been done, and are they recent, and are they accessible on the planning webpage?
Thank you, Joe.
Let's look into that. You know, just on the topic of hurricane evacuation, we're big advocates for hurricane evacuation times. When we were residents of Miami Beach, my wife and I, they essentially got rid of the hurricane evacuation time consideration in staff reports. We were against that. All over Florida, all over this country, hurricane evacuation times are as a criteria for development is weakening, and it's unfortunate. You know, we just happen to have gone 20 years without anything terribly horrible happening. I remember when I was here in 2004, I was here in 2005. I remember what it can be like. All I can tell you is we need to have a more serious conversation about hurricane evacuation times and about the erosion of hurricane evacuation times as a factor in development decisions. And we'll bulk up that part of the comprehensive plan.
And the urban area development boundary. You familiar with that?
In Miami-Dade County especially, yeah. Yeah. All right, well, as promised.
We've got one more, and then we'll
Okay.
cut it off and do an interaction with users.
Great.
It should be, it's on, yeah.
Oh, dangerous. So I have one more question, and it has to do with transport. I mean, you know, it's clear that, you know, we need more affordable housing. Well, that means we're going to have more people staying here. Yes, a percentage may be able to work downstairs. That's great. They're going to have a car. The reason why we have so much traffic is because there is no affordable housing here, and all the people come from up there and drive down to Marathon and wherever else. And so we have this train of cars that come down in the morning and go out in the afternoon. I left it, I think it was 5 o'clock the other day, and I had to wait over a minute for the traffic to go by, and I live literally the next street up. So it's insane. What do we have in the comp plan on, and you know the mayor's been on this as well, you know, what do we have in the comp plan on, you know, really solving the transit problems that we have here? There are practical things we can do. One of them is freebie. We've already got that. We were very innovative here in this community to establish free transportation, and a lot of people take advantage of it. The reason why more people don't is because it's not quite that convenient. More accessibility on these things. So I want to know what's woven into this comp plan that kind of addresses that, because today we're not going to solve the transport problem, but we can alleviate part of it. And the solution to the transport problem is large. It's a visionary you know, plan that I've expressed at the Board of County Commissioners, and that is a high-speed monorail that travels from Homestead to Key West. They were in shock, all right? I'm not in shock. I know it works. It works in Zermatt, Switzerland, has since 1931. You can't drive to Zermatt. You have to take the train, and you get free transportation when you get there. We need things that basically assert the priority of having those local transit systems, because that's the only way we're going to alleviate traffic. We're still going to have the visitors, whether they be workers or tourists coming in. We're going to have to deal with that. But we need to help alleviate the problem here in our community. Thank you.
Absolutely. And just a couple things on that. You know, Pam and I have been working hard just to get the train to Homestead. So the Miami Metro Rail, you're aware of this discussion. The conversation was, should the Miami Metro Rail go all the way to Homestead, or should Bus Rapid Transit go to Homestead? And so the monorail that you're describing, essentially the Metro Rail that we currently have, we pushed hard in order to get that. Now, where has it led us? The best I can say is Bus Rapid Transit is hopefully just a temporary step. Hopefully one day the Metro Rail continues to Homestead. And why not? If it continues to Homestead, why not continue some sort of heavy premium transit even further south? I like that idea. I think Henry Flagler did it in, what, 1900? All right, so we should have a discussion of that. A lot of people are going to find that hard, Barry, but But we've been working on transit in many places that got this that you're describing that didn't think it was possible. The plan does take a step. The plan does talk about a local circulator. A local circulator in a community of this density, with this many people, is not an impossible thing. And the plan talks about how other communities, island communities, have implemented that and paid for that. So maybe that circulator is a step toward what your ultimate vision is. The circulator is part of the policies in the plan. But sure, let's talk about the end state future. I mean, if we're talking about 2100 in terms of sea level rise and climate change, why not talk about it in terms of solutions too? All right, so let's do that. That's not in the plan yet. I love it. All right, you guys have been so patient. You sat quietly, and we want to kind of continue to have the one-on-one conversations. So Pam and I are going to be here. City staff is here. Elected officials. I see appointed officials. Let's now convene to have conversations around the maps. We very much appreciate you having us, continuing to host us in this community. It's the highlight this is our favorite project. So let's stick around and continue to talk about it. Send your comments to the city's planning department or online. We're going to read everything and evaluate everything and keep working on this until you see your idea in the plan. Thank you very much.